Hi, Carlos Bajor, Always Prepared Solutions. Uh, Still got the water barrel project going on behind me. It's an ongoing thing. I think I shared that I have this side here. It's completely full all up to the top. It works. It's not the best. I still have some improvements I want to make on the system. Wait for some parts to get in to finish the other side over here and just prove it out in the one stack. But I went to a class in Casper, Wyoming, cutting edge tactics and training. I actually took the instructor Michael Sessy's all of his courses that he offered. My wife went out. I went out there. Awesome class. Highly recommended if you're anywhere in that area. Go out and see him. Very good instructor. Very awesome guy. We kind of became friends after that. He kind of helped get me on track with a couple of things when it comes to firearm instruction. That isn't where I started out at. I started out in more medical stuff, and firearms was just kind of a passion of mine. But now I've picked up teaching that as well. But there's been another topic I've gotten into recently called Meshtastic, Mesh Networks. For my background, I was a tactical electronic warfare officer when I was in the Army. It was only a 3-week course, though. It was the basics of radio wave propagation, signal deconfliction for using electronic warfare assets for the Army. That was years and years ago. A lot of the basics of radio technology haven't changed too much other than adding in some digital encryption stuff, which was there then. It's just a little bit more prevalent now. I am not ham licensed, although I am working on getting a ham radio license. But mesh networks are something I've gotten into. He sounded interested in it. He kind of wanted an explainer. And so I have a general idea of how radio technology works, a decent enough background that I can kind of understand what I'm reading. But when I looked into trying to start this whole project out, there didn't seem to be a whole lot out there for the average person who doesn't understand that stuff. So I'm hoping to maybe breach that gap there a little bit. Bridge the gap, rather, probably be a better term. So that somebody who doesn't know anything about radios can hopefully get into this, because I think it's a wonderful system. So let's start with mesh networks. And what is a mesh network? A mesh network is just a network or a group of transceiving nodes, right? So you have something that can receive, something that can transmit, and they can transmit to each other. Traditional older term mesh networks you might think of would be like the ham radio networks that have been out for a long time. You'll have a transmitter, receivers, and you might have repeaters built into the network. Military radio nets are another example of a mesh net. It's just multiple nodes coming together, meshing together in order to create an overall network for radio transmission. GMRS is popping up now. Lots of new repeaters out there as well. And if you're interested in getting into GMRS, the federal licenses are $35 right now. This is the last time I looked at them, and they last for 10 years. You just apply for it, pay for it, go through it. As long as you meet all the requirements, which are very, very minimal, should be good to go. And then now you can use GMRS legally, which allows you to higher power transmission in order to talk to each other. In fact, got some good Baofeng GMRS radios right there. I like to keep them handy for when we go out in the wilderness to keep everybody talking to each other. Now, getting into closer to today's age, we have mesh routers for Wi-Fi. So you can buy, like I have a Raise router upstairs. I'm not plugging any particular brand on anything. It's just what I happen to have. It's what I bought. It works great. I could have multiple routers talking to each other and expanding my Wi-Fi footprint to a greater area. So if you're in like a large warehouse, you might want to use the same network but different with the same key, etc., in order to have everybody talking on the same Wi-Fi. But you don't want to have to put, it would make it easier so you can use that with multiple routers and expand your footprint on it. And that kind of gets us more into today, which this has been out for a couple of years, but I've only recently been kind of reading about it. Maybe the last 8 to 10 months, I've been trying to start my journey into this process of getting into Meshtastic. So Meshtastic, you can go to meshtastic.org. That is meshtastic.org. Check it out. They have a good overall mission statement on what they're trying to do and what the idea is behind it. But my explanation of it is that's an open source code for smart devices to communicate with mesh nodes, and using those nodes to communicate with other nodes and their connected smart devices. So I got some new ones in. I recently got my daughter's cell phones. They're just getting up to the teenage age, and it's kind of at that point I wanted to put it off as long as I could so that they kind of focused not on smart devices but on what they were doing. But now it just kind of makes more sense to have them have stuff. So I bought some additional nodes to get them set up with Meshtastic also. So, initial unveiling of these are what I'm using right now. Gives you an idea of what they look like when you get them. These are LilyGo T Echoes. Okay, so these will be the 5th and 6th ones I have. I'll get into why I have so many in a minute here, and I'll also show you everything I have set. So here's personal setup. First off, I need to properly mount my solar panel here. It's working right now. I mean, it's been in some good wind. It hasn't moved around a lot. Doesn't get a lot of wind right there, but that's just a trail cam solar panel. It has a battery built into it in here. I still have to clean this up too, but like I said, I'm gonna eventually switch it out. This is just a normal outdoor box. I drilled some holes in, and there's the unit. Lines are running through here. Close this back up. And we've had some rain, and this actually, even with the holes in the bottom, is doing all right, but run these over here, and I repurposed a flagpole that I wasn't using anymore and put a 3 decibel 950 megahertz antenna up there. Zip tied up. Again, we've had some good wind here. That's worked really, really well for me so far. No big issues. When I get the other unit in there, I'm going to clean it up a little bit better, reduce the amount of wire running around, etc. But this is what I'm using. It clears the roof of my house pretty good. Said I got 3 miles clear signal out of it. So take that off for what it's worth. But those would be the devices we're talking about. Smart devices. I believe iPhones can use Meshtastic. I don't know. I don't have any iPhone stuff. I use it at work. I don't use it at home. I use Android. It's just easier for me to do. That's what we already have, so it's just easier to keep going with that. But you can use your smart device to Bluetooth to these devices, and then use those to talk through those to each other. Meshtastic.org also serves as a good repository for mesh node information, firmware locations, like where you can find new firmware updates for your hardware, and related software plugins like for ATAC. If you're familiar with ATAC, it started out as the Android Tactical Awareness Kit. I believe now it's called the Android Team Awareness Kit. Wonderful bit of software, lots of functionality. That honestly could probably be a 16 to 40 hour course all on its own, just in order to get the basics of what you can do with it. So I'm not going to get into that. There's other good videos on YouTube on that, and I don't know all the ins and outs of that myself, so I'm not going to try to explain it. This here again, I'm not even an expert on this, but I'm just explaining what I've gone through and what might help you get started. So the mesh node itself allows the devices to communicate digitally and wirelessly in austere environments. That's the big key right there. So we're talking like wilderness areas where there aren't any cell towers, or if some type of natural disaster hits, like say a tornado comes through town and takes out the cell towers. You have these devices, as long as you can charge them, and we'll get into what we can do with that momentarily. As long as you can keep them charged and you have your smart device and keep that charged, you can continue texting as long as you're within range of anybody else with one of those devices. There's different types of nodes and manufacturers. So I have LilyGo T Echoes. That's primarily what I'm using right now. There's also Heltec. They have some good nodes out there. I think they're more prevalently sold in Europe. That's generally who I see using them more often. Rack Wireless, they have good nodes. I have a friend who's using those. We have yet to link up. We're a little bit geographically offset from one another, but we're going to try to link up, see how we can get those talking to each other at some point, hopefully in the near future. There's another manufacturer out that he pointed me to called Beartooth. I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I do know it is advertised as a ready-made unit that you can get. I also know it costs about 15 to 20 times as much as one of these, right off the line. And I believe it's mostly geared towards like first responders, such as like wilderness firefighters, search and rescue teams, etc. Where you could use it in town as well, but and that's mostly what it's already made for. So I don't know. Maybe the extra cost is for the organization of it. I couldn't tell you. If anybody does have experience with Bluetooth, feel free to chime in the comment section. I would love to hear your take on them. They do look like they probably work decently, but again, I don't have any personal experience with them, so I can't really speak more than what I've already said. So, general specifications on mesh nodes. So, all the ones I know of, they come with Arduino operating systems on them. For anybody who doesn't know operating systems, we're talking like Windows, Android, Linux. For anybody using that for anything, Arduino is just another type of operating system. Very user input friendly. It's been used for a lot of stuff. A lot of people are now using them to reflash or build from scratch computers for their engines, for their drag engines, etc. Obviously, it's being used for this here. The transmissions that we're using are in the 915 megahertz range. So you can get them in 868, 433 megahertz. I think there might have been one more that was listed, but 915 is what's legal for the US, okay? That's why I have 6 nodes. I was just reading through and I wasn't even thinking about bands that might be allowable. I got the 433 megahertz because my understanding was, okay, well, that's going to give me the most distance. And after I got them working. I looked some more into it, and I saw, oh yeah, that's for Europe. That's the European band. So they're sitting on the back burner. I have them in case I ever travel overseas, I guess. But now I have 4 915 megahertz units. I have 2 more parts sets. I have Liligo TT Goes. I have not put them together yet. I gotta solder a couple of connections on them. One of those eventually I'm gonna put together and use it as my base unit, as my home base. But right now I'm using a T-Echo for it. The T-Echoes came with 850 milliamp hour batteries. I say when I was actually testing them, driving around, trying to get messages between me and my wife, etc., those batteries lasted roughly 10 hours of hard use, with partial standby, a reasonable, like, normal texting time. I'd say you might get a day and a half out of it. I upgraded my batteries to 2,000 milliamp hours, so 2 amp hour batteries in them. You can go up to 3. If you want to fit anything bigger than a 2, even that was kind of cramming it in there. You're going to have to get another casing for the back. Right there, the casing here, that back will pop off. There's a lot of people that they have 3D printers, printer programs available for these casings you can get if you have a 3D printer. I don't. But a lot of people are making them, selling them on eBay. Not too hard to get. They'll have an extended case that you can put on here and put a larger battery into it. If you're putting your own stuff together, I have 3,000 milliamp hour batteries that I can use for the TT Goes, and I have cases that came with it that I'll be able to put together. So getting into what you're going to eventually do with them when you get them, right? So you get in these units. What do you do with it? Well, anytime you get any kind of new piece of electronics that has some type of computer system in it, it's always a good idea to run through an update, right? You get a new cell phone. What's the first thing it wants to do? Check for updates. You get a new computer. What's the first thing it wants to do? Check for updates, right? See if the software has been updated since it was put into the package. So these here do have some firmware updates that you can get. Again, you go to meshtastic.org. They'll have run-throughs on where you can go to in order to get to the firmware links. Everyone I have time with, the USB connection cable. Well, hey Marilyn, what are you doing down here? Sorry, my dog's visiting. What, you want to be on camera? No, you're not. These are also data cables, so you have to check to see if the cable you're using is for power and data or just power. But everyone I've had has worked for both. I put it in my laptop, downloaded the firmware, put it on there. If you got the double USB connection cable, you can use your tablet for it as well. I did use that once on one of them, worked okay. Once you update your firmware, and I'm going to show you what this looks like on my tablet. Yeah, I use a Blackview ruggedized tablet for teaching. So Meshtastic itself is in the Google Play Store, free to download. There's your icon, okay? And once you pop it open, and I actually had somebody flying overhead yesterday with my setup, and see, they did a position share with me. If you go to Reddit, there's a Meshtastic subreddit in there, and a lot of people post stuff where they're flying overhead, and they'll just see who they pick up as they're flying. But you download this, you can link to your device as long as your Bluetooth is on. Okay, it'll hook in. You can share your specific channel with other devices, other smart devices, and you'll be able to have some location information in there, what other nodes you can pick up in the region. Sometimes they're just retransmission towers. And this is, I don't know if these are other nodes necessarily. I believe a lot of these are just other transceivers that are on 950 megahertz. It just picks up whoever. But as long as you're within Bluetooth range, you can do all of your hardware changes, all of your updates, right through the app, and it transmits it. You put in what differences you want, what things you want to change. If you want to use encryption, encryption's available. Whether or not you want to do a short range, medium range, long range transmissions, whether you want the transmissions to go fast, whether you want them to go slow. These essentially cache the digital transmissions, wait until they will wait a certain amount of time, is my understanding. Again, somebody who knows more than this, feel free to chime in the comments. This is meant to just help people understand everything. I'm not trying to tell you that I'm the expert on this. But it will hold those messages in its cache until it comes into range of another transmission node. And then it will transmit. And it will only hold so many, I don't remember the exact numbers, 30 to 60, something like that, messages. But when you're in using it, it reads just like text messages. I mean, there's no difference there. I've gotten roughly 3 miles of clear transmission range out of this. I'm in the Midwest. There's a lot of overhead lines, overhead power lines. Anybody with any understanding of radio transmissions should understand that those are going to provide some interference. I also had to raise my antenna up above my roof. I have a steel roof, so that definitely impedes transmissions a lot, depending on where I'm at, if I'm in the shadow of that. But I would say out in the open, I know some people have gotten clear signals out to, what would that be? 6, 10 miles, 15 miles. I think it was 18 kilometers. Try to do some math in my head. I like using anything but the metric system. Just kidding. It's just a running joke I have. I have no issues with the metric system. I was an artilleryman, and we did everything in kilometers and meters, and it's fine. But the other side of this is that if you have other nodes in range, they will act as automatic repeaters. So they will bounce the messages off one another either until there's nowhere else to go and the message times out, and essentially the transmission times out, or until it reaches its destination. It's just open source broadcasting at that point. You can set these nodes up specifically as repeaters or as transceiver nodes. So transceiver means you're transmitting and receiving. The repeater is just a pass through. It's just there to act as a pass through. My understanding of the difference between those two is that as the repeater, it's going to allow more bandwidth just for signal transmission because it doesn't have to hold anything in the cache. It's not giving you any messages. So there are other purpose-built units you can get as well that come with keyboards. You can attach onto them, and you can just use the device. You don't have to actually have a phone to use them. It's just a texting device. The other side of being able to use it to an austere environment is you can use it in a non-austere environment, such as what we have right now, where the grid's up. And you can use it for better privacy of your own messaging. Unless there's somebody there specifically tuned into your frequency, and you're using the encryption and tuned into your encryption key, if you don't want them to get your messages, they're not going to. So that's a plus. Nothing's going through the cell network. It's not going over the cell network. It's not going over the internet. You're transmitting point to point. Of course, again, the downside of that is you have to be point to point. You have to be line of sight. You have to be able, the transmission has to be able to receive. So you're limited in how far you can go. Obviously, there's other software out there you can use to give you a little bit more expectation of privacy. It's just a higher expectation of privacy. It's not a guarantee. Nothing's guaranteed. I'm not going to get into all those, but if you have any specific questions, anything on this you would like to have covered in more in depth, let me know in the comments. I will be happy to maybe link some other good videos. A lot of them kind of start out without, again, people having any understanding really of how radios work. Your average Joe, I think, might have a little bit of a difficult time getting into this. Hopefully, again, this helps bridge that gap there some, and hopefully I didn't over-explain or under-explain anything. As always, thank you for watching. I appreciate the support. I look forward to all the comments you all have. It's very good stuff. Hopefully you see other videos I posted. I read your comments. I try to answer them. I try to explain where I can, where maybe you think you have an idea of what, or you got a certain understanding of what's happening, and that might not be what the intent was. And I try to acknowledge where you have some great ideas, and I'm going to try to put them into play myself. So anyone who wants to chime in, please do. And as I said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.